and they're going to be looking for work.
And with that, we'll go to statements by members. Déclaration de député. Oh. No, okay. The speaker will take this statement. Okay. Okay.
Honourable members, order. I was informed that there was a technical problem with the bells in the Confederation building today where no chimes were sounded. I understand that members were nonetheless able to make it to the chamber and vote. J'aimerais aviser le député.
I'd like to advise the member that we will continue to have technical problems with respect to the bells in the Confederation building. If there is to be a vote before this issue is dealt with, I would ask members to take all necessary measures to make sure they are aware if any vote is held.
Honourable members, I thank you for your continued cooperation and patience as we address the problem. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The Honourable Member for Calgary Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize a government program that has positively touched the lives of constituents in my riding. I have seen firsthand how Canada Child Benefit Program helps families of all classes, cultures, incomes, and their goal of raising healthy children. I'm pleased to say that my riding of Calgary Skyview has the highest number of Canada Child Benefit recipients at 20,670. Thanks to this program, families in Calgary Skyview are receiving an average of $145,611,000 in government funding per year. Today, on Budget Day, where there is a focus on economy, women and middle-class families, I'm proud to say that Canada Child Benefit has had a positive impact on my riding. Children are the future of Canada, and it's important that parents have the financial ability to help them succeed in their lives. By adding an average $6,800 to the pockets of Canadian families each year, the government has laid out the foundation for parents and children to thrive. I urge the government to continue the positive momentum towards improving the lives of Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Brampton East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week I got to meet a constituent of mine in Saraba, Punjab. Dr. Gurjeet Bajwa traveled to my father's village in Punjab as a part of a 7-member team from William Ulster Hospital here in Brampton. They held free eye camps, a diabetes camp, and provided free medical coverage to people in my father's village in Punjab. How cool of a story is that, Mr. Speaker? Constituents from my riding in Brampton East went back to where my father's story started to provide free medical coverage in a rural community. They also signed on to agreements for new research opportunities, and doctors also made a plan to ensure that people in Punjab had the awareness on diabetes, which is a big problem in that region. This is just another great example of effective and sustainable international partnerships that play critical roles in advancing our respective healthcare systems. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Gurjeet Bajwa and his entire team from William Ulster.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Confederation.
Mr. Speaker, it is with great shock and sorrow that I rise to mark the sudden and unexpected death of Troy Black of Calgary. In the middle of a Mexican vacation with his wife, Lindsay, he required life-saving blood transfers to save his life. Sadly, there was not enough of a supply, and we lost a good man to eventual cardiac arrest at the age of 34. I came to know Troy well as the former president of my provincial riding association. The son of former Alberta MLA Patricia Nelson, Troy was well known and an active member in our community. It is my hope that his passing serves as a lasting reminder to us that thousands of Canadians depend on blood donors to stay alive. As a blood donor, I encourage others to please donate. You do not know who your blood goes to, but Troy is proof that it could be someone you know very well. On behalf of our entire community, I want to pass along our deepest condolences to Pat, Lindsay, and the entire Troy Black family. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Pierrefonds-Dollar.
Mr. Speaker, the first week in February is the week of interfaith harmony, where we recognize the importance of understanding between religions.
Across Canada observe this week by putting on activities bringing people together. Groups such as Interfaith Harmony Halifax, Interfaith Grand River, the Edmonton Interfaith Centre, as well as the Interfaith Councils of Calgary, Surrey, and Canada. Our initiative, the Canadian Interfaith Open House Weekend, saw dozens of religious spaces open their doors to their neighbours.
I'd like to congratulate the faith groups who got together with fellow Canadians and who took the time to learn more about their fellow Canadians.
Conflicts. It is truly heartwarming to see Canadians promoting religious harmony.
L'honorable député de Jonquière.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to talk about the founder of the IGA in Jonquière, the Mellon IGA, Madame Réjeanne Saint-Pierre, a real pioneer in the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean region. She was awarded the Grand Builder Award. And Madame Saint-Pierre is the second woman in Quebec who became the owner of an IGA, and she began her career in 1962. She started as a stockist in the fruit and vegetable aisle and rose through the ranks until she later bought an IGA in Arvida. She is daring, passionate, and determined. These are the words used to describe this woman and her career path. And she passed on her passion to her two children, who are following in the family tradition and are owners of two supermarkets in the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean region. She is inspiring the next generation. I'd like to pay tribute to Réjeanne Saint-Pierre, a source of inspiration and success. The Honourable Member for Sudbury.
I speak in this House about Dr. Remi Ogundemu. Dr. Ogundemu spent formative years in Nigeria and served in rural Nigeria as medical officer with the National Youth Services Corps. Later, she moved with her family to my riding of Sudbury, under the Ontario Underserviced Area Program, where she worked as a pediatrician, a much-needed specialty. Remi's insatiable desire to contribute keeps her involved as a member of various institutions. She is very passionate in giving a hand up to help Black women and youth. She seizes every opportunity to be involved in activities and projects that will contribute to the advancement of young Black youth. In May 2016, she received one of the 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women Inaugural Awards. Dr. Ogundemu, thank you for your contributions and all your hard work. Merci.
Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, February 5th marked the launch of the first ever Canadian School Counselling Week. Each year, this week will provide a great opportunity for Canadians to recognize and highlight the tremendous contributions of school counsellors that they make to the personal, social, and educational well-being of students. I'm proud to say that Ariel Habrick, a constituent of mine, is the president of the School Counsellors Chapter of the Canadian Counselling and Psychotherapy Association. The CCPA is a national association providing access to exclusive educational programs, certifications, professional development, and provides direct contact with professional peers and specialty groups. As many young people throughout this country try to find their way in this world, struggle with mental health issues and learning disabilities, the need for counselors is growing. Mr. Speaker, we all know nothing is as important to us as the well-being of our children. Therefore, on behalf of my honoured colleagues and parents all across Canada, I would like to take this opportunity to thank school counsellors and the CCPA for the care and guidance they provide to our children.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Rouge Park.
Mr. Speaker, during my recent visit to Sri Lanka in January, I met with many Tamil mothers whose loved ones surrendered to the Sri Lankan army during the last weeks of the war. These mothers and other family members are on a quest for answers and in desperate search to find their truth. Their stories are heart-wrenching. They have protested now for over a year in the sweltering heat and dust in makeshift tents on main roads in the north and east of the island. The Sri Lankan government has failed to give into the simplest of demands from the mothers, including a call to release the names of the missing persons. As Canadians, we hear their call for truth and justice, Mr. Speaker. Today at the United Nations Human Rights Council, our Minister of Foreign Affairs called on the Sri Lankan government to undertake a process of accountability that will have the confidence of the victims of this war, including the families of the disappeared. We stand in solidarity with those who are seeking justice and accountability in Sri Lanka and with the heroic mothers who continue to inspire and motivate us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, I know that we're all looking forward to hearing the Minister of Finance deliver Federal Budget 2018 later this afternoon, with the anticipated focus on gender equity and on increasing women's participation in the workforce. Recently, in my riding of Davenport, I met with artists, creators, and other members of cultural industries. And what came out of it was a need to focus on the lack of female and diverse female representation on the boards of artistic and cultural organizations, as well as the need to significantly increase the number of female artistic directors across Canada. I'm pleased that the Heritage Committee has agreed to study this issue and look forward to its recommendations. I'm proud of our Prime Minister and our Cabinet for their leadership on gender equity and for ensuring a gender lens in every dimension of the work that we are undertaking on behalf of all Canadians. As the Secretary General recently said, societies are better when there is full equality in girls' access to education, in women's and girls' access to labour markets, with equal work and equal pay, and equal participation in the different institutions of civil and political society. Thank you.
The honourable member for Calgary-Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, Rare Disease Day is recognized on February 29th, the rarest day of all, as it only happens every 4 years. And this year, we won't be able to do it. But it's a fitting day for rare diseases that affect 1 in 12 Canadians, with over 6,000 rare diseases identified so far. Many more are affected or at risk, but remain undiagnosed or unaware that they have one. Of those, 75% are children, and 30% of victims will die before their 5th birthday. These statistics hit very close to home. My own family is affected by a rare disease called Alport syndrome, a genetic condition that leads to deafness and eventually kidney failure. I know the helplessness and the financial hardship parents can feel when facing an incurable condition that is affecting their children. In light of this year's theme, research, I want to thank researchers for their efforts towards finding a cure for the rarest of diseases and disorders. Rare disease research contributes to improved diagnostics, treatment, and cures, as well as improved health and social care for parents and their families. I invite all members to join me in recognizing Rare Disease Day and standing with those affected and their families.
Honourable member for Dartmouth-Cole Harbour.
As Canada's oldest warship and the only remaining Flower-class corvette, HMCS Sackville is an important part of Royal Canadian Navy history. Declared a National Historic Site in 1988, it serves as a naval memorial honouring Canadian sailors who died in the Battle of the Atlantic, and a museum ship that hosts thousands of visitors at Halifax Harbour each year. This past January, our government announced its contribution on behalf of all Canadians towards preserving HMCS Sackville and this important part of Canadian history. The non-profit Canadian Naval Memorial Trust will receive a contribution of up to $3.5 million to undertake critical repairs to the ship. This contribution will ensure HMCS Sackville's preservation for the next decade. We are proud of our women and men serving in our Royal Canadian Navy, and our government is proud to honour their service, past, present, and future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacal. Mr. Speaker, as we celebrate Black History Month, I'm proud to underscore the contribution of a remarkable man and a personality in the Black community of Châteauguay-Lacal, someone who passed away recently. Clinton Ritchie, one of the founders and former president of the Horizon Community Association.
That every girl and boy from our Black community should have the opportunity to excel in their education and reach their full potential. Clinton's widow, Patricia, is continuing his legacy, which I know will bear fruit for decades to come. Mais Clinton nous manque aussi énormément en raison de sa bonne humeur contagieuse et de sa capacité à réunir les gens de tout horizon. I am proud to take part in the recognition of the tremendous contributions of Black Canadians in this Black History Month. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Mr. Speaker, I want to read a quote I want all of you to stay angry, to make sure that no government in the future allows a Canadian's fundamental rights to be violated. Who said that, Mr. Speaker? The Prime Minister did. Well, I can tell you one thing, Canadians are incredibly angry at this government's new values test for organizations that apply to the Canada Summer Jobs Program. Several organizations in my riding recently submitted their applications and explained in detail why they could not sign the new required attestation. These were reasonable and fair explanations. Now these organizations are being told that their applications are incomplete and they need to resubmit them with the attestation signed. The Prime Minister cannot pick and choose which charter rights he wants to stand up for. Freedom of belief and opinion is guaranteed by the Charter, and the Prime Minister needs to recognize this. I'm calling on the government to do the right thing and give all Canadian organizations the ability and opportunity to hire a student for the summer.
The honourable member for Order. The honourable member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, this Black History Month, I'm proud to highlight stories of strength, courage, and vision of Black women in Canada. Throughout Canada's history, there have been numerous Black women that have made a lasting impact on our society. From Viola Desmond to Jean Augustine to my outstanding seatmate, the member from Whitby, these Black women have served as role models for young Black women all across Canada. Recently, I had the opportunity to hear from Black women from my riding of Brampton West on what Black History Month means to them. I heard from Pastor Vinnie Manu on the barriers she faced as a Black woman, but I also heard from Abby Ajibalado on the hope she sees for the future in the eyes of her young daughters. These women, along with young Black dynamic women such as Candace and Paige from Brampton West Youth Council, continue to inspire me and many in our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Churchill, Kiewatinook-Askey.
Tina Fontaine was a 15-year-old girl from the Saugeen First Nation. She was a daughter, a niece, a sister, a girl who had her whole life in front of her. But like so many Indigenous women and girls, it came to a tragic end. And like so many Indigenous people, there has been no justice for Tina Fontaine. As has been said, Tina was let down by many: social services, the child welfare system, the police, and finally the justice system. But the injustice faced by Tina Fontaine, like Colton Bushy, have shaken up our country. Their killings have mobilized many. They've made it clear that there is no reconciliation without justice, that racism is alive and well in Canada, and that racism kills. That enough is enough. There must be fundamental change when it comes to the systems that target Indigenous peoples and push people to the edge. So today, we call for love for Tina, for justice for Tina, for justice for Colton, and we call on the federal government to commit to fundamental change so that no Indigenous woman and no Indigenous man go missing or are murdered ever again.
The honourable member for Perth Wellington.
Mr. Speaker, in 10 short days, Canada's Paralympic athletes will go for gold in Pyeongchang. Among the 55 Canadian athletes is Corbin Smith from the small town of Moncton, Ontario. Moncton may be a small town in terms of population, but it is big in community spirit. And that community spirit was on display this past weekend as local residents and service clubs decorated the main street with Canadian flags and maple leaf banners to celebrate their own and to wish him well as he competes in Pyeongchang with his teammates. As a member of Canada's Paralympic hockey team, Corbin will be fighting to bring home Canada's first sledge hockey gold medal since 2006. Mr. Speaker, our athletes have trained for years to become the best in the world. And in the weeks to come, they will bring home the medals to prove it. To Corbin and all of our Canadian athletes in Pyeongchang, I say good luck. You make all of us proud to be Canadian.
Honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today as chair of the Canada-Afghanistan Parliamentary Friendship Group and as the member of Parliament for Vaughan Woodbridge, a riding with a proud and entrepreneurial Afghan-Canadian diaspora, to recognize The Breadwinner, a Canadian co-produced and Oscar-nominated film. Ce film est basé sur le livre.
The film is based on the book by Canadian writer Deborah Ellis, and it tells the story of a young Afghan woman who has to disguise herself as a boy in order to support her family.
The Breadwinner is reflective of strong women everywhere including in Afghanistan, who defy circumstance and find courage through adversity. Notre gouvernement est déterminé.
Our government is resolved to promote gender equality, to give greater power to women. It also cares about protecting the rights of women, and especially the most vulnerable.
Let us congratulate the breadwinner for celebrating female self-empowerment and for raising awareness of the fight for gender equality.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister confirm that members of his delegation during the trip to India submitted their list of guests without the names being validated by his office, the RCMP, or the Security Service? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as we've already said, the invitation should not have been sent. Once we became aware of it, it was withdrawn. Canada and its security organizations, as well as police organizations, are non-partisan and very competent, as well as being effective. We have confidence in them when it comes to protecting Canada and Canadians, and they continue to do excellent work to serve and protect the interests of Canadians.
Mr. Speaker, the question was whether or not any one of the members of the delegation had the right to invite guests without those names being submitted to the PMO. I'd answer that question. But, normally the worst a Prime Minister could do on a foreign trip would be to accomplish nothing. But the Prime Minister has taken failure to a new level. In fact, he's left our relations with India worse off than before he left. Now, the briefing to media on the Jaspar Atwal affair included the theory that was advanced by a national security official that India was somehow complicit in organizing this invitation. Does the Prime Minister agree with those allegations?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's disappointing that the opposition doesn't recognize the importance of the Canada-India relationship. India's growing economy offers significant opportunities to strengthen Canada's middle class. We welcomed over $1 billion in investments between Canadian and Indian companies, which will lead to the creation of more than 5,800 good, well-paying middle-class jobs for Canadians. These investments will grow Canada's economy, encourage innovation and entrepreneurship, and increase collaboration. We know that it is the deep ties that unite Canada and India that help create these high-quality jobs.
I remind honourable colleagues, including member for Dufferin-Culloden, of the rule in Standing Order 16 against interrupting when another member is speaking. The Honourable Opposition Leader.
Mr. Speaker, a senior security official made the allegation that the government of India is somehow complicit or involved in the Jaspal Atwal affair, that somehow they were motivated to embarrass the Prime Minister and Canada by colluding to have him at the official events that the Prime Minister was attending. A senior security official made these allegations. Does the Prime Minister agree or disavow those allegations?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the previous government, we respect the non-partisan nature of the public service, especially those who serve in our national security agencies. We trust and listen to the advice and actions that they take, and they will be in the national interest and they will be impartial. All Canadians can be proud and should be proud of their non-partisan work, which our national security agencies carry out on a daily basis.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister tell the House whether or not anyone in his office arranged, organized, or participated in the media briefing provided to reporters that included the allegation that the government of India was somehow involved in his embarrassing blunder in India?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can understand where the opposition finds this difficult, because for 10 years they used the professional public service for partisan ends. They torqued the public service every possible way they could, and they do not understand that our professional nonpartisan public service, does high-quality work, and when one of our top diplomats and security officials says something to Canadians, it's because they know it to be true.
Order. 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 Members may have noticed before that sometimes they hear things in here they don't like. But they don't have to react, and they should wait until they have the floor before they speak. And that includes the honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston, who I know knows the rules well and has the ability to restrain himself. And the honourable member for Edmonton West, I'm sure, will want to join him. The opposition, the honourable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister assure Canadians that no other individuals with links to extremist or terrorist organizations were at any of the official events in India while he was there?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in this country we take very seriously the responsibility of keeping Canadians safe, of countering violent extremism, of fighting against terrorism. And I can assure the member opposite, and indeed all Canadians, that our national security agencies and our police agencies do everything necessary to keep all Canadians safe at all times.
The honourable member for Rimouski-Nejet, Témiscouat-Basque. Last Friday, during his disastrous trip, the Prime Minister received a GIP, a call, the Tax Havens, a Canadian Connection by Ellen Desneaux, and it just shows how complicit his government is, as previous governments are. And this complicity means allowing the Canada Revenue Agency to conduct cost-benefit analysis to determine whether or not they would enforce the law. For a large company like KPMG that has the means to defend itself, well, no point in taking action against them. But for taxpayers who can't defend themselves, well, they're going to take a hit. Will the budget today finally put an end to this two-tier justice system? Yes. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member knows full well, we are fighting tax evasion and have invested $1 billion to give the agency the tools it needs to counter it. The agency now has a team charged with dealing with non-compliance abroad. We have adopted common reporting standards and the exchange of information, making it more easy to exchange information with our OECD partners. As of December 31st, 2017, the agency investigated many cases, and criminal charges were found in 40 cases. The honourable member. Well, those taxpayers are small taxpayers. The government is leaving the big fish alone, the ones like KPMG, and it's enabling the rich and powerful to go untouched because they're rich and powerful. Now, let me give you another example of how complicit this government is with the rich and famous of the world. It is enabling large American companies, web companies, to not impose taxes, sales taxes, that our Canadian companies have to. So this government is giving an advantage to American companies over Canadian companies. So Amazon has a benefit over Simons. Will the budget deal with this nonsense once and for all? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. As we've said on several occasions, even if the NDP calls for it, we're not going to increase taxes on Canadians. We won't increase taxes on taxpayers. Those are the promises we made and that we will keep. Canadians are already paying enough tax. We're not going to be increasing taxes on them. That's what the NDP wants. We will not increase taxes. I would encourage members to show restraint and to not interrupt when someone else has the floor.
James Bay.
Jas Paul Atwal, a convicted political assassin, was given an all-access pass to the Prime Minister's India trip because he was useful to local Liberal politics. And when this debacle became an international incident, the government doubled down using a senior civil servant and now the Prime Minister to spin a conspiracy theory that somehow the Indian government is trying to make the Liberals look bad. What was the Prime Minister thinking? Putting the interests of the Liberal machine ahead of national security, international relations, and Canada's reputation.
Hear, hear. Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as we've been saying, this invitation invitation never should have been sent. As soon as it came to our attention, it was withdrawn. Canada's national security agencies and police services are non-partisan, both highly competent and effective. We trust them to promote and protect Canadian security. They continue to do an excellent job in serving and protecting the interests of Canadians.
The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Yeah, we do trust him to put the interests of Canada ahead of protecting this Prime Minister's political interests. The fact is he has spent numerous times with Mr. Atwell. Why? Because he is useful to political insider politics in the Liberal Party. But he is also accused of trying to beat Ujjal Dosanjh to death with an iron pipe. What is this? Fargo? I served with Mr. Dosanjh in Parliament, and it's incumbent upon all parliamentarians across political lines to put the interests of our nation ahead of partisan pork barrel politics. Doesn't this Prime Minister understand that principle?
Honourable Prime Minister.
This individual never should have been invited, and as soon as we found out that he was, that invitation was rescinded. The member responsible for the invitation has taken full responsibility, and I will be following up with that member later this afternoon.
I encourage the honourable member for Windsor West to restrain himself.
The honourable member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, last Tuesday, a terrorist convicted of attempted murder was photographed with the Prime Minister's wife and the Minister of Infrastructure. Wednesday evening, that criminal was invited to a dinner in the presence of the Prime Minister. The next day, the Prime Minister told us that the invitation came from the High Commissioner, following a recommendation from a Liberal member. And then all of a sudden, we learned that the senior security official to the Prime Minister tried to lay blame on the Indian government. If the Prime Minister is telling it as it is, can he provide proof of the involvement of the Indian government?
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it has been well explained in this House and elsewhere that the invitation that had been extended should not have been extended. And when that became known to the government, the invitation was in fact rescinded. With respect to the work of our security personnel, Mr. Speaker, we rely upon them and we respect them for their careful, precise, thoughtful advice and information. We treasure very much the work of our police and our security officials.
The honourable member for Richmond Arthabaska. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, following his family trip to India at taxpayers' expense with 19 ministers and members, we can no longer believe the Prime Minister. He's refusing to take up his responsibilities, and he's laying blame on everyone, but inventing a conspiracy theory implicating an international ally to save face because of his blatant lack of judgment goes beyond imagination. Does the Prime Minister have proof? And if yes, then he needs to table it here in the House.
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the accusations and the insinuations coming from the opposition are simply and utterly false. The facts of the matter are that we rely upon our security personnel in our police forces and in all of our security agencies to supply impartial, professional, independent information and advice, and that is exactly what they have done.
Opposition House Leader.
The accusation is that the Indian government conspired so that convicted terrorist and Liberal insider Jasbal Atwell would dine with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister just said that that is true, that he trusts his national security advisor, and that that is, in fact, true. Before this Prime Minister destroys our relationship with our ally, the government and the country of India, will he please tell this House what proof he has of that allegation?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member, both today and yesterday, provides her interpretation of events. In fact, her insinuations and her accusations are false.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister tell me what part of this is false? Was there a briefing arranged by the PMO with the media? Is that a lie? Was that briefing done by the National Security Advisor, Danielle Jean? Is that a lie? Was the Indian government complicit in conspiring so that there was a terrorist in India at the same time as the Prime Minister so they could hang out together? Which one of those three things is a lie?
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member knows that issues in relation to national security are not discussed on the floor of the House of Commons. Otherwise, the interests of the country can be compromised. The fact of the matter is we rely on our security officials to provide independent, impartial advice to the government and information to the country. They have performed their jobs in every respect in this matter exactly as they should have performed it.
Honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, it's really quite astounding that today the Prime Minister of Canada confirmed that the claims are true that the Indian government conspired on the Atwal affair. He said that in the House today. Media reports revealed that the Indian government actually asked Canada to review the invite lists ahead of time, but the Prime Minister's office said no. Can the minister confirm they refused to collaborate with the Indian government ahead of this trip?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, there were elaborate efforts made consistently through all of the preparations and the trip itself by the RCMP, by CSIS, and by all of the appropriate agencies in global affairs and in the Government of Canada to make sure that every precise detail of the relationship between Canada and India was properly performed and exercised in every respect.
Honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the only elaborate efforts made are the elaborate efforts to cover up the disastrous trip from the Prime Minister, to use a national security advisor to spin the media on a conspiracy theory against our friends in the Indian government. We learned that they wanted to actually collaborate with Canada on security, but they refused, and now the Prime Minister is blaming India by saying what his national security advisor said was true. Will the Prime Minister or will the Minister apologize to our friends in India for this scandalous accusation?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, at the end of the visit, I'm pleased to note that the Prime Minister of India said that the talks with the Canadian Prime Minister were very fruitful. Our discussions focused on closer India-Canada cooperation in various sectors, including investment, trade, energy, and stronger people-to-people relations. There were 6 MOUs, 22 new initiatives, $1 billion in investment, and 5,800 jobs identified, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
The Liberal budget is a golden opportunity for this government to show real action on women's equality. In the last 2 years, we've heard many fine words, but sadly very little investment in true gender equality. Immediate funding is needed this year for pay equity, for childcare, for domestic violence shelters. This is long overdue and would have the biggest impact on women's lives. Will the budget spend on concrete actions now, not just talk, to truly help women in this country get ahead?
Minister for the Status of Women.
Mr. Speaker, when we invest in women, we strengthen the economy for everyone. This has supported our work since we formed government 2 years ago. It was at the heart of our work when we introduced the Canada Child Benefit Plan, lifting 300,000 Canadian kids out of poverty. It's why the National Housing Strategy devotes a minimum of 25% of the $40 billion promised to support women and girls. It's why we introduced $7 billion for childcare so that families across the country can continue to look after their needs. Mr. Speaker, we all look forward to the Minister of Finance introducing the budget later today.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, the government says that it wants to encourage women to return to work through an incentive for parental leave. That's fine and well, but once the leave ends, childcare services outside of Quebec are so costly that many parents, and specifically women, often have to make a difficult choice between pursuing a career or staying home. But there is a simple solution. one the NDP's been calling for a long time now, a universal, affordable child care service. When will we see that? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know just how important child care services are for parents, because when we talk about equity, we have to talk about good quality, affordable, educative services, but this is important for children as well, and also for children living in vulnerable families. In 2016, we have stated that we will create 40,000 child care spaces between now and 2028 across the country, so they will be of good quality and more affordable.
Mr. Speaker, the Public Safety Minister claims Canada's security agencies did their job on the Prime Minister's disastrous India trip. The fact is, our security experts weren't allowed to do their job because the PMO didn't share the guest list with the RCMP or CSIS for screening. And now we know that India's security agencies did ask to see the guest list, where they would have detected the notorious, convicted, attempted assassin, but were refused access. Mr. Speaker, it's time for the Minister and the Prime Minister to explain this unacceptable security failure.
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, the security problem was identified. As soon as it was identified, the invitation was rescinded, Mr. Speaker, and that action was taken by the Government of Canada as is appropriate.
Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Well, that's not good enough, Mr. Speaker. The PMO should have known. The Minister should have known. The RCMP and CSIS certainly did know that the hotel where the PM's cocktail party was held, the hotel at which the convicted attempted assassin posed with pictures with the Prime Minister's wife and others, was the site of a major terror attack in 2008 that left one Canadian dead. Why did the Prime Minister choose to disregard the assistance India offered and then push a conspiracy theory that has undermined relations with India?
The Minister of Public Safety.
Speaker, again I say with absolute certainty, the Canadian security and police authorities performed their jobs in all of these circumstances exactly as they should have performed them. They provide independent, impartial, professional, non-partisan advice and information to the Government of Canada and the people of Canada, and that's exactly what has happened in this case.
Député de Charles.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, we can see the circus continues. It's not over. The government claims to be transparent, but they're getting all wrapped up in this. Now, what we want to know is this. We learned yesterday from the media that the Indian government had asked for access to the guest list, but the Canadian government refused. I want to know whether India did make such a request. I also want to know what the government's response was.
Public safety.
Mr. Speaker, the arrangements with respect to the Prime Minister's mission to India were very carefully prepared, not only by the Department of Global Affairs, but also with the assistance of CSIS and the RCMP. They took all the necessary steps to ensure the security of the mission, and the officials with respect to the Prime Minister's office, once they had identified the presence of a particular individual, they took the steps to rescind his invitation.
For Barry Innisfil.
There aren't enough buses in Ottawa for the Prime Minister and his backroom executives to throw people under, Mr. Speaker. They've thrown the nonpartisan National Security Advisor under the bus by having him float a conspiracy theory that the Indian government was responsible for trying to undermine India-Canada relations. Let's be honest. The Prime Minister did this to justify his disastrous trip to India, but more than that, they pushed this to the media without a single shred of evidence. Will the Prime Minister provide the evidence, if it even exists, that supports this laughable conspiracy theory?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, when security officials and police officials and representatives of our security and intelligence agencies provide information and offer advice either to the government or on occasion to the public, when they do that, They perform their functions in a truly impartial and independent manner, and they do so in the national interest of Canada, not in the interest of any political party on any side in this House, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, at a time when transportation issues and fighting greenhouse gas emissions is a source of concern for the vast majority of our citizens, setting up a high-frequency train is almost universally supported. The citizens of Trois-Rivières have been waiting over 25 years for passenger rail service to be restored, and the Minister of Transportation has in hand all the studies needed to make a decision. Can he tell us if he considers passenger rail service to be an investment in our regions, or like the Conservatives, does he think it's just a useless expenditure? The Honourable Minister of Transportation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my colleague knows, passenger rail transportation is important for this government, and as he also knows, we are studying the possibility of a high-frequency train between Quebec and Windsor. We've invested $3.3 million in the budget of 2016. The study is ongoing. It is a very serious study, and when we have the results, we will announce them to everyone.
Mr. Speaker, Canada has more seniors now than youth 15 and under. By 2036, 1 in every 4 residents will be a senior. Yet, when this government came into power, they got rid of the seniors minister. Isn't it time to have a national senior strategy to fill the gaps too many seniors fall through? What better than a dedicated minister to work full-time on their behalf? Seniors deserve more than a small increase to their GIS. They deserve a full-time advocate. When will this government act?
The Minister of Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted to say that we have a government that is entirely dedicated to the welfare of our seniors. We've started in 2016 with an increase in the guaranteed income supplement of up to $1,000 per year, benefiting almost 1 million vulnerable seniors. We have put back to 65 years old the age of eligibility to old age security, which is going to prevent 100,000 vulnerable seniors from falling into misery, Mr. Speaker. We have increased the Canada pension plan. We have enhanced it, which will benefit generations of seniors. We're going to continue to work very hard, Mr. Speaker, to advance the welfare of our seniors.
The member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, Canadia's new defence policy emphasises NATO is important to Canada and recognises that joint intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance is essential to NATO. In response to today's security environment, NATO has significantly increased the use of its AWACS fleet, specifically in Central and Eastern Europe, where Canada leads a multinational NATO mission based in Latvia. Can the Minister of National Defence update this House on the government's position with regard to the NATO AWACS program?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague from Kelowna Lake Country for his former service as a CF-18 fighter pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Mr. Speaker, I was proud to announce our government's decision. Mr. Speaker, I was proud to announce our government's decision to rejoin NATO's AWACS program at the NATO Defence Ministers meeting earlier this month. This decision to rejoin the program after the Conservative government abruptly withdrew in 2011 is a sign of our government's strong commitment to the NATO alliance. We understand that in order to be strong and secure at home, we must be engaged in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, earlier in question period, the Prime Minister confirmed that he agrees with the National Security Advisor who advanced a conspiracy theory that it was the government of India that conspired against the government of Canada to embarrass the Prime Minister on his trip to India. He also said that the member from Surrey Centre extended an invitation to a convicted attempted murderer. Is he saying that the member from Surrey Centre is complicit with the Indian government in conspiring against the government of Canada?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister indicated that that particular member extended an invitation which never should have been extended, and when the fact of that invitation became known to the Government of Canada, and particularly the Prime Minister's office, that invitation was rescinded, as it should have been.
The Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we have two theories here. One, that the member from Surrey Centre acted alone and issued an inappropriate invitation for which he will be having a very stern meeting with the Prime Minister. The other theory that's been advanced is that from the National Security Advisor is that this was a vast Indian conspiracy set out to embarrass the Prime Minister. Which one of those theories advanced by this government is a lie?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it has been said repeatedly and accurately, A, the invitation should never have been extended. Once that invitation became known, it was rescinded by the Government of Canada. We've also made the point very clearly that our national security and intelligence and police agencies perform their functions in a completely nonpartisan, impartial manner, always in the best interests of Canada.
For Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, last February we warned this government that putting our senior care facilities in the hands of Anbang, a company with murky Chinese ownership, was dangerously naive. Wall Street even had concerns about it, but they just blindly went ahead and did it. So what's happened? Anbang has collapsed, the chairman was arrested, and our senior care facilities are now in the hands of Communist China. We warned the Prime Minister and our fears have come true. I would like the Minister to tell us, does he believe that it's appropriate that our senior care homes across British Columbia are owned and operated or owned by Communist China?
Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the Cedar Tree acquisition, the legally binding commitments remain in place with regards to jobs, not to close or repurpose any of the existing residences, to support expansion, which is very important, and also to abide by provincial and health regulations, Mr. Speaker. We're going to make sure that these commitments are honored.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Centre.
Mr. Speaker, last year the Liberals approved the sale of dozens of BC retirement homes to China-based Anbang Insurance. On Friday, we learned that officials in Beijing had assumed control of Anbang's assets, including Canadian seniors' homes. Does the minister really think that this is an acceptable situation?
Wow. Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, any decision we make goes through a rigorous and robust process under the Investment Canada Act. We've been very clear that the legally binding commitments remain in place around jobs and making sure that we maintain a high level number of jobs in Canada, not to close or repurpose any of the existing residences, and to support expansion. I also want to take this opportunity to highlight that the particular acquisition must abide by provincial and health regulations, which is very important for the senior residents.
The member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Last Friday, the Chinese government took over insurance giant Anbang, citing serious corruption and incompetence. This is the same company that the Liberal government allowed to take over British Columbia's largest retirement home provider. Decisions about the care of Canadian seniors are now being made offshore by a foreign government. Mr. Speaker, when the Canada Health Act calls for public administration of our healthcare system, it does not mean from Beijing. What is the health minister doing to address this unacceptable situation?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, and I can assure the member opposite that the specific legally binding commitments around the health regulations will remain intact. This is something that we took precision around in terms of the Investment Canada Act process. We understand the important concerns raised by the members opposite, but I can assure the member and this House that we always have and always will continue to advance our national interests and do what's in the best interest of all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, on February 20th, the Canadian Judicial Council recommended that Judge Michel Giroir be removed from office. Since 2013, he cannot sit on the bench or hear cases. In a vast court region like Abitibi-Témiscamingue and Northern Quebec, this has considerable impact on the public's access to justice. Can the Minister of Justice tell us where we are in the process and if she intends to table her recommendation before Parliament this week so that we may act expeditiously to restore access to justice?
The Minister of Justice.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the question being brought up. I did receive last week a recommendation from the Canadian Judicial Council that recommended the removal of the judge that was referenced. I will now consider that recommendation and will proceed in due course. I wanted to thank the Inquiry Committee and the Canadian Judicial Council for their input in this regard, and anything further would be inappropriate for me to comment on as this matter may come before this House.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, I quote, "If we cannot transport our product, we can't pay our bills, and we are being punished for something that is not our responsibility, but the government's." That is the heartfelt plea from a Western grain farmer who cannot sell his crop because the government refuses to act. They have in their hands the power to act, but as usual, they prefer to blame everyone else for their inaction. The Minister of Agriculture does not have his feet on the ground. When will he tell the Minister of Transportation to stop penalizing grain producers and put our exports back on track? The Minister of Transportation. Mr. Speaker, this government recognizes the importance of an efficient grain transportation system, and we are working on the matter. That is why I have communicated with CN and CP, and I spoke with CN this very morning. This is important. The month of February was particularly difficult, but the situation is improving, and I am confident that the rate of grain transportation will improve in the coming weeks.
Cardston Warner.
Mr. Speaker, Conservatives negotiated CETA and TPP because we know the importance of the market access for our agricultural sector. Recently, CN and CP have fulfilled only 38% of the grain commitments. This growing rail backlog has led to lost sales and unreliable exports for our grain producers. This Liberal government is putting critical trade deals at risk, and now Canadian farmers can't even get their products to port. Will the Agriculture Minister get off the bench and take action to ensure farmers have adequate rail access to get their grains to market?
Mr. Speaker, our government recognizes the importance of an efficient and reliable rail system to transport grain for our farmers. That's why we put Bill C-49 in place, unlike the previous government that did absolutely nothing for 10 years. I have been in touch with CN and CP. I was in touch with CN this morning. The month of February was particularly difficult, but I feel that at this point, looking at the future, that the grain situation will certainly improve in the months to come. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Foothill.
Well, it's great to hear the government once again standing up for the rail lines and not fighting for Canadian farmers. Mr. Speaker, the Western Grain Elevators Association said the situation is dire. The grain backlog is getting worse, not better. The Liberals ignored our advice to pass a separate grain transportation bill. They failed to extend important provisions that was in Conservative legislation that was protecting Canadian farmers. The Liberals have to stop blaming everybody else for their mismanagement and take definitive action now. How much money and how many critical export markets are our farmers going to have to lose before this government stands up and takes action?
The Minister of Transport.
Well, as I say, Mr. Speaker, unlike the previous government that did nothing for 10 years, we actually brought forward Bill C-49, which, by the way, this government voted against, which was intended to have a fair rail legislation for the movement of grain. And I was speaking to CN this morning, and in actual fact, the amount of grain transported at this point in time is only 3% behind the average of the past 3 years. Last week was particularly bad, but the situation is actually improving. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Mr. Speaker, new and innovative research is essential to improve the lives of people affected by brain disorders and diseases. Foundations such as Brain Canada are working actively to change the lives of about 3.6 million Canadians affected by all types of neurological disorders. Can the Minister for Health inform this House of what she is doing to support research in neuroscience throughout Canada? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for his important question and for the work that he does in his riding, as well as his work for the health community. On February 19th, my colleague announced a subsidy of $10.2 million to create the Canadian Open Neuroscience Platform. This platform will disseminate data and it will improve treatments for Canadians affected by neurological disorders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr.
Speaker, last week the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans expropriated 25% of the Arctic surf clam quota and awarded a new license to a consortium of 2 companies. The president of both companies in that consortium is the brother of the Liberal member from Sackville, Preston, Chesapeake. Wow. Did the fisheries minister know that his Liberal caucus mate's brother was the president of the consortium of companies?
Good question. Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, what we did know is that the previous Conservative government began a process in 2014-2015 to bring a new entrant into this fishery. But what we knew, which they didn't know, Mr. Speaker, was the importance of including Indigenous peoples in the prosecution of that fishery. So we had an open public process where we received 9 submissions that were carefully analyzed that include partnerships between Indigenous peoples and other commercial entities to participate in this lucrative fishery. And Mr. Speaker, we chose the best proposal in terms of employment opportunities for Indigenous people, and we're proud of that.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, Canada must put pressure on Syria and Russia to maintain the ceasefire, not only for part of one day, but permanently. To do anything else is an affront to our humanity.
The only way to bring peace to the Syrian people is to find a political situation and ensure political solution and ensure that those responsible for atrocities are brought to account. Where is Canada in pushing for such a solution?
Here, here. I'll make the Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire in Syria to allow humanitarian access must be implemented. We strongly condemn the brutal and targeted attacks against civilians, including in eastern Ghouta. It's vital that all parties respect the ceasefire unconditionally to stop the massacre of civilians and allow the delivery of humanitarian supplies. The massacre of the people in Syria must end, and Canada will continue to act and add voice on this issue, including funding first responders in eastern Ghouta, such as the White Helmets.
The member for Mount Royal.
Mr. Speaker, on January 24th, the Minister of Transport was in Israel to finalize the expansion of the Canada-Israel Air Transport Agreement. Many constituents in my riding have greatly benefited by the free travel back and forth between the 2 countries, in particular the new Montreal-Tel Aviv route introduced last year. I'd like to ask the Minister, what were the outcome of his discussions? Can we see more flights between Canada and Israel?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my fellow colleague from Mount Royal for his excellent question. In fact, as you know, for this government, offering more choice at lower cost with better service is one of our priorities, and that's why I was particularly glad to be able to announce the expansion of the air transport agreement between Israel and Canada. We are adding up to 7 more flights on a weekly basis. This is not only good for moving people and goods, it's good for business, it's good for our strong relationship between Canada and Israel.
Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, every accused person is entitled to a robust defense, and defense counsel play an integral role in Canada's justice system. Nonetheless, some concerns have been raised about the appointment of John Norris to the federal court. What criteria did the Minister of Justice use with respect to this appointment?
Minister of Justice.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to stand up to talk about our robust appointment process and to celebrate the meritorious candidates that I've been able to appoint across the country, some 160 thus far. In terms of judicial candidates, I take the evaluation of the independent advisory committees who rate as recommended or highly recommended. I take into account considerations from the Chief Justices in the region, the case law of the individual, the expertise of the individual, and it's resulted in, as I said, 160 fantastic appointments across the country.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe-de-l'Île. Mr. Speaker, Netflix and wealthy foreign platforms are tax exempted by the Government of Canada. That's an aberration. This is an injustice in matters of taxation which will undermine the middle class and which is not supported by our entire cultural industry and the government of Quebec. And to add insult to injury, the Minister for Heritage refuses to reveal the content of the agreement with Netflix to the government of Quebec. Will the Minister finally be transparent, respond to requests for information, and put an end to this blatant injustice? The Minister for Canadian Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that television, radio, and media are all facing issues. We have looked into this file and we have significantly invested. And we are modernizing our legislation. The Prime Minister has already said that we have made a promise and we are going to keep it. We recognize that the situation is complex. The situation must be global. We need to have an overall approach instead of a piecemeal approach. The Honourable Member for Minicoka. Today, workers in Quebec's seasonal industries have already fallen into the employment insurance black hole, just like they do every year, and just like every year the government watches them fall into that gulf without doing anything. In Eastern Quebec, a coalition of elected officials, of workers, unions, and businesses, which I am part of and which cannot be ignored, is asking for two things: immediate resolution of the problem and emergency measures. Time is precious for the very survival of our regions. Will the government commit to setting up real measures which put bread on the table so that never again does any worker, any family, any community fall into this again? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All Canadians recognize the importance of EI when it comes to ensuring income security and ensuring the transition between employment. Often there are difficult conditions for communities. Over the last several years, we have set up significant measures to ensure flexibility for EI benefits. We are continuing to work very hard, Mr. Speaker.
Ordre du jour.
Orders of the day. Government orders. Government bills. Resuming debate at second reading of Bill C-69, an act to enact the Impact Assessment Act and the Canada Energy Regulator Act to amend the Navigation Protection Act and to make consequential amendments to other acts.
I encourage members to take their conversations into the lobbies. And I appreciate the help and assistance of members who have already said shh. Much appreciated. Resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The environment and the economy go hand in hand. We intend with this bill to improve the environment and the navigable waters of our country. We want to help both Canadians and protect the rights of Indigenous people. There will be better rules to protect the environment, things to make us to make sure that we will be going forward properly. We want to create new jobs and new economic opportunities, and this working with all stakeholders. We want better rules for major projects, pipeline projects, hydroelectric projects,